Yo, yo, yo. I wanted to put together a video of basically my favorite cards. I know at this time of year people go through and they do what cards to them are worth the most. And in this case, that holds true. These are my most valuable cards for the most part. I actually don't even have like a giant collection. I've got, maybe like four or five of those white boxes filled with slabs, and a lot of those are from Milwaukee Braves cards. When I started getting back into collecting, I was just building team sets from PSA, so I've got like entire team set from 53 through 58, and that covers tops and Bowman and the years that Bowman were there. So that's a lot of cards, but I kind of just find that I'd rather have 200 amazing cards, and I'll pick up some here and there that are low budget, as you saw from my other video that I put out. But I learned early you can't get every card, and I'd rather just have the best ones and not take up a ton of space, and that way you can kind of enjoy everything all over the place. And you'll see that throughout here. I've got a lot of vintage, but there's modern and a little bit of ultra modern and whatever. So we're gonna go through this. I had a really hard time picking out my top 25, so I kind of just bumped it to 30. And even then, there was two cards that I was like, you know what, that's not that big of a deal if they don't show up in this video. So we're gonna start here. I'll kind of give if there's a backstory to it, I'll give it, but try to keep things kind of tight, keep it going, so I'm not rambling and whatnot. So first off, 1983 Fleer Tony Gwynn rookie. I submitted that, and it came back as a 10, and that was probably in like 2015 when I sent that in. I don't know if 10s were lenient more or not. That's for you to decide. But I was really happy that it came back, and it is razor sharp. I mean, it looks really nice, and so I'm just happy, that I got it, and to have a Gwyn and a 10. I'd love one in tops, but I have a 9 for now, and someday maybe I'll get there. But there's other rookies I like instead. So anyway, this one is relatively newly acquired, 49 Bowman Duke Snyder. I picked that up. I've got a buddy who is kind of getting out of the hobby, and there's some cards in here that are going to pop up from him. So they're all ones that I picked up from him in the last few months or so. And so that one is would be like number 29, I guess. And again, value wise, it's going to kind of go all over the place. So if you see one, you're like, what? It's because it's more of what I enjoy, more or less. Some cards bring back a ton of memories and whatever from a kid aspect. And so that's why it might not hold, the value might be all over the place, and I'm not going to really worry about that too much. So 54 Topps Al Kaline. I inherited a bunch of cards from my stepdad, which got me back into the hobby, and a number of these are going to be from there. This is one of them. And this is kind of learned how this K-line and other cards coming up, is how I learned about even like what PSA was, and that was in 2013. I was aware of grading, but I had no idea of how it worked or anything like that. So I kind of learned pretty quick on what to send in, what not to send in. But he had a lot of vintage stuff, so for the most part, any Hall of Famer that I had, I was just sending them in because that was a no-brainer. But I had a bunch of commons from like 54 Topps, 55 Topps, and it didn't seem to make any sense to send those in. So anyway, LK line at number 28. Okay, this next one I bought. This is from the first collection that I had ever bought, and I got it for the whole collection for like $50 from a guy. and it had the Tiffany and Tiffany traded from 87. I sent this one in, came back as a 10. I also sent in the Maddox, and it came back as a 10. I no longer have the Maddox, which I kind of kick myself about, but I'm okay with not having it. I eventually replaced it or found another one, and it came back as a 9. But maybe someday I'll get a 10. But still, when you're sending in cards and you're still new to this, especially like Junk Wax era and like that 83 Gwyn, to get back 10s it's pretty awesome. It's a good feeling. I think I kept this one because the Maddox was selling for like $250 at the time, and this Bonds was only at like $100. And if you look at eBay comps now, you'll see how those prices have kind of shifted, and I'm glad that this is the one that I held on to. All right, 54 Topps Willie Mays. I have a couple Willie Mays cards, but I mean the yellow in this is so cool, and swinging the bat and just his smile and everything. I mean, what more do you want? So, love that card, and I got that also from my stepdad. All right, moving on. Number 25, 53 Satchel Paige. Amazing card. A little off-centered, doesn't matter. But yeah, really cool card. That's the only 53 that's going to show up in this. So, pretty cool though. All right, moving along. Mr. Cub, 54 Topps. Similar to the Mays, where he's just, the smile and swinging, and the old Cubs logo, and all the old logos on these cards are amazing. So this next one, I'm working on getting every great Wisconsin, star, all the greatest. I picked this up at the National this year. A guy had it listed at $1,200. I got it for $1,000 and was super stoked on it. I have no idea where this card sits like right now. I mean, that was only 4 or 5 months ago, but at the time I considered it a steal, and I think it's going to go up in the centering on it's great. So I was pretty happy for it, especially because I wasn't seeking this card out when I went to the National, which I actually think is probably the best way to go to the National now that I've gone in with that approach, is to just go in and just see what you can find that you enjoy. Have a short list, but don't be spending your entire time going table to table looking for one particular card, because you'll spend a lot of time and potentially leave unhappy. Okay, moving on. 56 Topps Jackie Robinson. I mean, this the action cards of 56 are great, but this one in particular, when Jackie's stealing home, I don't know what more you could ask for. Just a gorgeous card, and really stoked that I was able to add it into my collection earlier in, late spring maybe I got it. So, yeah, happy about that. But it's not the last Jackie you're going to see today. This next one here is the 96 SI for kids. And this card's cool because my dad was a dentist, and so for a long time he would rip the cards out of the SI for kids and save them for me. And when I got back into collecting, and so 2013, 2014, I think I found this card, or found out about that this card was in a 10, was going for like $1 million or some wild number, 6 figures at least. And I had this card in storage, and like that day I raced home or raced to the storage and like dug through this giant manila folder or envelope. And when I hit this, I just screamed bloody murder, because I was so stoked. I'd read an interview where a guy said you know, on taking this card apart felt like you were defusing a bomb, and I totally had that. I practiced on some other cards, and then I went for this one and sent it out as I sent it out kind of like as express, and at the time that was only like $30. But yeah, came back and it was a 7, and you can see how the border from the top card is part of it. But I don't know, super cool card, and it was a pretty cool, story to share with my dad, and he was like, "I'm so glad I saved those for you." And I still have the sheets from like Venus Williams and Kelly Slater. Those are complete. I tore out the Tony Hawk when I was like in high school, and pinned it up on my bulletin board, but I digress. So yeah. All right, so that is we are moving now into the top 20. I just got this card today, actually. 38 Gaudy, Bob Feller. If anybody ever got a chance to meet Bob Feller while he was alive, what a great guy. Signed autographs like forever. He joked that items without his signature were worth more than the ones with it, because he had signed so many baseballs and 8x10s and cards and whatever throughout his years. But super nice guy and amazing pitcher. And if he would have won 300 games easily if it weren't for the war. But super cool card. There's another version where there's some like little writing and notes along there, which is also really cool. But just to have this in my collection is super awesome. All right. I got this one at the National as well, if you watched that video that I did in the summer. 55 top Sandy Koufax. Picked this up at the National. I made a trade for... What did I trade for? Satchel Paige. And in a 1.5, I believe. I could be wrong about that. And in a Bo Jackson 1990 score and a 10. And in some cash. But got this, and for the most part, it's very well centered. A little bit off left to right. And there's a little bit of print marks up along the top, but I mean, it's from 1955. I know exactly how the printing could be on some of those cards. So really like this card. Obviously, it's picked up steam in the last few years, and I think well deserved. So super cool. Happy to have it in my collection, and yeah. All right. I was talking about how I enjoy trying to get all the greatest in Milwaukee, and Giannis is certainly that. I was at Game 6 of the Bucks championship game when they won the title, so that's kind of when I was like, I want to start getting Giannis cards. I've picked up 7 different base rookies. I'm not so much interested in trying to get the parallels and everything else, but if I can just put that run together, there's like 10 total base rookies, and I'm missing 3 of them. So they're out there. They're not super hard to find. It's just that people want like 4 or 5 times more than what they, comps show that they should go for. So I'm just being patient, and when they come around, I'll get it. All right. Next up, this one. Harmon Killebrew in a 7. I picked this up 2 summers ago. And if anybody watches Baseball Card Collector, Investor, Dealer with Chris Sewell, he actually showed this card on his regular rollers, just kind of pointing out that you can get really good vintage rookies in high grade for not, a whole bunch. At the time, a Koufax in like a 3 was going for $1,000. And I mean, this is a 7, and this is the third biggest rookie in that set. But I mean, it's a 7 of a Hall of Famer from 55, and that's a low pop count. So I think if those opportunities present themselves, you should take them up and just kind of look at various pop reports on whether it's PSA or SGC, whatever you prefer, and see what's out there. And I mean, if you're patient and you can find like an auction, or you can work with the guy through Buy It Now, take advantage of those, because I think as time goes on, the pop count will go up overall, but to find like higher grade stuff, especially where PSA is at now, and who knows what their protocol is and what their standards are, you'll find lower grade Killebrews or Koufax or whoever, but it's going to be harder and harder to find anything higher than a 7 for sure, raw at least, to submit. So I don't think the number, whatever the pop count is on these in 7s, I don't think that's really going to go up more than maybe another 25 or 50 in my lifetime. I'm just guessing, but that's kind of where I stand. Same thing goes for this next card, although being in 69, Reggie Jackson, it's a newer card, so there's a more opportunity for this to go up, but for the pop count to go up rather. But super cool card. I love the A's. I absolutely loved them as a kid. I'm not happy about them moving to Vegas. I think that's awful for baseball. I feel bad for the city of Oakland losing all 3 of their teams in just a few years, but that's a whole other story. Anyway, when COVID was going on and everybody was going bananas for whatever, Ja Morant and Kobe White and and whoever else, I got into a little bit of baseball and got Acuna and Soto and stuff early, and I should have sold all of them. But I was like, I don't know what I'm doing when I would rather have vintage cards. And I was flipping raw cards regularly, and I was putting together, $400, $500 a week flipping, what should be like 25-cent cards, and I was selling them for like $3, $4, $5 constantly, and doing like 20, 30 of those a day, and just putting together a bunch of money quick. And I was just buying whatever vintage rookies I could. And there was like 3 main ones I picked up. This is one of them. Another one will come up later. The other 2 I left off, but so so that would be card number 16 in my list here. Next up, I want to make sure I got the right pile here. Yep. Next up then is 1990 Mark Jackson and the hoops, and this is the famous Menendez brothers card. I submitted this myself, and I was buying these cards like in lots for nothing. I was finding 1990 hoops and rummage sales. People were trying to sell boxes, and I would just pull every Mark Jackson card they had, and the Sam Vincent, but and just be like, I'll give you what do you want for these? And they'd be like, I don't know, $1. And so I was getting them for 10 cents, 20 cents, whatever, selling them for 8 and 10. And I saved a small stack and went through them, and I pulled the best 3 that I thought, and this one came back as a 10, and I landed 2 others that were in 9s. So at the time, the pop was only like 65, and I think now it's probably close to 200. But yeah, and this was one of those submissions that you had to wait, like 18 months to get back. So when I did get it back, and this came back as a 10, I was obviously very stoked. So cool card, interesting story, and that's one that I'm just, you can show whoever, and they're kind of fascinated by it. So 53 Bowman, Pee Wee Reese. It's like the first action shot that a sports card company did. And so amazing. And just love it. There is the reason for it to be a 1 is, and I don't know how well you can see it, but there is tape residue along the top there. Otherwise, I think it probably would have graded, a 4, maybe a 5. But based upon the other cards that I'd sent in from that set that didn't have tape, those came back as like 4s and 5s. So I'm guessing it probably would have fallen right in line there. So, but I mean, what a super cool card. Someday maybe I'll upgrade it, but for now I'm just happy that it's in my collection. All right. 1990 Bo Jackson score. I picked this up right at the beginning of the pandemic. Like the day we all got those checks. I got this for $50. My wife actually thought maybe she had COVID. And so I'm like panic shopping in the parking lot because they wouldn't let me in. And she went in and everything was still relatively unknown and whatnot. And so, to keep myself from having like an anxiety attack, I just went on eBay and I bought a couple of cards, and this was one of them. And the other one will be coming up here in a little bit. But yeah, it kept my mind at bay. And it was kind of the start of, probably the start when everybody else was getting back like into cards. And I had been into cards for sure, but I mean, I went on a hell of a run during that 2-year stretch. So this is like the first one that really kickstarted me back into the hobby after taking maybe a year off, except for doing some autograph stuff. Next up then, 55 Bowman Mickey Mantle. This is really the only, I've got 2 other mantles where he's on his own. One is was that 57 All-Star. And then I have another one, a 53 Bowman, but there's a good amount of paper loss on there. So this card's incredible that it's a 6. And yeah, just, I mean, all mantle cards are iconic. I know that. I'd like to get a couple more, but for now, my focus is on some other things, and so maybe I'll go after some later on. But for now, I'm happy I've got that one. All right. This next card has picked up some steam among collectors, and I'm not sure when the hype train kind of came through, but Rube Waddell might have actually been chasing it. If you know his story, he had a lot of mental issues, but was a great pitcher. When trains and fire trucks would go by, he'd like run off the field and go chase them, like wrestling alligators and doing all sorts of things, helping put out fires and whatnot. There's a great podcast about him on the Dollop, and it's called The Rube. Look that up if you want to hear more stories about it. And it's like 2 comedians, and they just go on about him. So I don't know if maybe that's where people started hearing more about him, or if he was known previous to that. But that was my introduction to him. And just, I mean, what a character. And I have his portrait card as well, but I got this one first, and so I kind of enjoyed this one a little bit more. But yeah, check out the Rube if you're looking for some quality entertainment and funny stories. Okay, so that brings us into our top 10. I was telling you I was in the parking lot of the hospital buying that Bo Jackson. I also bought this Bill Ripken. I was debating if I should just drop an F-bomb on here or not, but I don't know if kids are in here and they want to watch, and I don't want to upset any parents, I suppose. Maybe if I was 20 years younger, I wouldn't have cared so much, but but whatever. So yeah, the Bill Ripken era, iconic. When I was a kid, me and my friends would go to card shows, and we'd see it and we'd laugh and giggle and point when our parents weren't looking, or they clearly were looking, and we just kind of got away with it. But such a wild story, and pretty unique card. I have the blackout raw. I've got the scribble and a 9. I had an opportunity to buy the whiteout one, but looking at the card itself, it just didn't seem right, and it was on a huge discount. So it was one of those things. It was at an antique sale, or an antique shop in some booth, and so the guy who owned it wasn't there, and they couldn't get a hold of him. And I was on vacation. I just didn't feel right buying it. It was one of those, if it's too good to be true, then it probably is type thing. So I let it go. Anyway, I've got this one, and I think this is the best one to have anyway, just because it's so kind of hilarious. All right. Next up, Roberto Clemente, 1955 Topps in a PSA 4. I'd had my eye on this one for a while. It is one of the most iconic cards of, especially of that decade, if not all time. And I was looking to get, in my budget, was that like 25, 27, somewhere in there. And I was like, okay, well, I can be able to get a 3 with that. But then every card on eBay, and this is going back to just being patient, all these sellers were trying to sell 3s for like 35 and 4s for 5,000, and it was just like this. None of this really makes sense. And I know that we were all coming off of a huge high of the boom, but just watching comps and waiting for one that I knew was going to be well centered and whatnot. I knew it was going to show up, and sure enough, it did. And I think it was sitting at about and I at that point I just said, if I'm gonna have to spend $3,500 for a 3 on a buy it now, I'll go a few $100 more to make sure I get a 4 if it comes up, and this one did. And so I think I budgeted it for like 32, and just to make sure I got it, I just said hell with it, and I went like 33.50 right at within like 5 seconds. And I think when I put the bid in, it was at 28 or 29, and I hit it for 30.50. So worked out in my favor. Really glad I have this card. It's gorgeous. Like I said, well centered. There's a little bit of like white speckle and whatnot, but again, you're gonna expect that from a vintage card, so I'm not complaining at all. Let's see. 1990 Donruss Crusade, Ken Griffey Jr. purple. This is out of 100. There's a tiny little ding on the back corner, which caused it from not being a 10, but that's all right. There's only 100 of them. I got this from a collection that I had purchased, and I was stoked. I didn't get upcharged on this. I just sent it in. It was like $15 to grade, and I just really, I'm not a big insert guy, but because it was one of those things where when you get it, you're pretty stoked on it. And for a while, I think I could have sold it for anywhere between 8 and 10K, but it's come down somewhat, probably about 25% of that. But I know that there's Griffey collectors out there, and I've got one of the 100, and who even knows if all 100 are even out there. I don't know what the print, how many were being printed, or like of Donruss, and how many are sitting in a lot, in a landfill. But cool to have it, and just to have this part of my collection is pretty sweet, because it is kind of a flex. And then to piggyback off that is my 89 Upper Deck 10. Growing up, this card was everybody's dream card. It was impossible to find even complete sets of Upper Deck because, I really wanted the Griffey card. At one point, I owed about 15 of these. I sent in some for grading and whatnot. This one I actually picked up one night about 2015. I may or may not have had one too many beverages and just nabbed it, and it was like 300 at the time. And so the time I thought that was pretty crazy. But now, at one point it hit during the pandemic, like 5,000 or something wild. And now it's sitting right, 1,800, 2,000. So obviously I'm no regrets on that. Love this card. Thought about making a rainbow run and going like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 all the way down. But that's kind of silly. And I've got other cards I need to buy. So, all right. My Bob Gibson here in a 5. This card's so cool with the pink, the lowercase lettering. There's a signature in there and, an older logo. Everything about this card is super cool. And, I don't know how I've heard that the pink pops more on certain cards than others. Mine isn't super bright, but I mean, it's bright enough that it's pink, and some of the cards that are listed and whatever, it could be camera work, but I just love this card. It's super cool. I met Bob Gibson once, and he was just the coolest guy. One of my buddies next to me was struggling to get his signature, to get the spot where he wanted his signature in this book, and my buddy apologized to him and said, he's like, even just standing by you is intimidating, just referencing people trying to dig in, in the batter's box. And Gibson just kind of laughed, and he was like, take your time, son, but don't take too much time. There's a long line here. And, him and his handler, or, agent, whatever, were kind of laughing. And yeah, good guy, amazing pitcher, super cool card. All right. Another great pitcher, Nolan Ryan. I got this at the National 3 years ago. And prices were coming down. It's come down a little bit since then. I got it for $2. I think it's probably around 18, somewhere around there. But yeah, I mean, it's very well centered. And it's, even when I started collecting in like 87, this card was like featured on like Full House, so even then it was a big deal. And Nolan Ryan was, kind of having his second run, and with the closing out with like the Rangers and everything. So there was like that Nolan Ryan moment near the end of his career, and everybody was like in love with him. Plus, I was at his 300th win, and that makes this card like kind of a big deal to me, emotionally, because that was me and my dad. He took me because my grandpa took him to go see Warren Spahn's 300th win, so my dad wanted to like pass that torch on. So now I don't think I'm ever gonna see another 300th win, but I tried to go see Glavine at Miller Park. I chased Roger Clemens all over the Midwest one year, and then he finally got it in New York. Those two were the main ones. I don't think I tried to catch any other ones, but trying to see Clemens get his 300th, and trying to see Glavine get his 300th, but all that was just because I had saw Nolan Ryan's 300th win, and it really taught me actually about like what milestones were and whatnot, because I was in elementary school, and it was 1990, so I was 11 years old. All right, speaking of milestones, and also tying that into Wisconsin greats, my Robin Yount in a 9. I got this one. This was for a long time the best card that I owned. When I got it, I think I spent 11 or 1200 on it. Um, I work in the service industry, and I just crushed it all weekend in tips, and again, may or may not have had one too many adult beverages, and picked this up, and yeah, and then again, this card shot way up, and it still holds its ground fairly well, but I just I love Robin Yount. I was at his 3000th hit. I went to that entire series. He got it on the third day, and yeah, so one of my most valuable cards in my collection for sure. But the next three are my favorites. So I keep referencing back to like when I was a kid and collecting and whatnot. That was my favorite card growing up. When I got a raw Conseco, that one was like I was in third or fourth or fifth grade. And that was my big present from my parents, and I totally just like flipped out. I couldn't even believe it that they had given me like the holy grail of all collectors at the time. And so I that the card actually my old house got broke into, and I had a small stack of cards out that I was going to send a PSA. Nothing like super crazy, but that was in there. And it probably would have graded like a 6 or 7, but I more or less wanted it for sentimental value. And I eventually just went back and I was able to get this one. And I had a 9 for a long time, then I had a 10. I've got like 5 of these signed. I've got I've got so much Conseco autographs. It's pretty wild. And I think so I think I'm gonna be trying to stop, but I got another one today, so we'll see. Just loved Conseco growing up. It was like him and Yount, Nolan Ryan, Bo Jackson, Ken Griffey Jr. Like those were my top 5. So all right, we've got 2 left. I'd said that I've got another Jackie Robinson coming up, and there it is. 49 Bowman. I picked this up from the same friend that's getting out of the hobby. It's very well centered. There's some mangling or whatever near the bottom. It's a 1. Doesn't matter because the red pops so well and the blue pops. And it's like I said, and it's centered. It's gorgeous. I absolutely love it. It immediately became my second favorite card, and I didn't expect that we were gonna be running this close to 40 minutes. So I'm gonna get right to number 1, and there it is, my 54 Topps Hank Aaron. I got this at the National in 2015, 2016, whatever year it was in Chicago. I went there for the sole purpose of getting this card. I'd saved up for a couple of years to get one. And at one point, I was in the market for a 7, but prices jumped too much that I got out. But I went for the 6, and even at the time when I bought it, it was a bit of a premium because it was at the National, and talked to the dealer. He was able to come down a little bit, not as much as I wanted. I took a picture of it, and I told the guy just to hold it for like 10 more minutes because I came back and looked at it like 3 times, and I was just like hemming and hawing away if I should or shouldn't. It's like the biggest purchase I ever had, and so I went over to BBCE, and I'd talked to Steve, who I'd known a little bit from buying sealed wax, and showed him a picture, and he was like, "It's a really nice card, and 28 is it was 28. That's what he wanted." He's like, "And that is a premium." He's like, "But next year it's going to be 35, and then what are you going to do? You're going to have to go to a 5." So, I was like, okay. And I walked over and I shook the guy's hand and said, I'm going to take it. And as I was counting out the hundreds, these guys from the PSA website, the PSA message board that I'd kind of gotten to know at the National a little bit, they were there. And they just happened to be like walking by and they're like, oh my God, you're buying it. And I'm like shaking as I'm counting out hundreds. and, and like, so as soon as I laid down the last one, the PSA guys were just like screaming and just totally like standing ovation and, and all this stuff. It was something else. And then Jeff at Card County, who I bought it from, he was like, this is going to be my favorite moment of the National. Cause, just the whole build up to it and whatever. So, that is my favorite card. And I had to get it because it all started because I was going to collect only Milwaukee Braves cards. And you just saw all the other things that I've bought since I made that decision in 2013. So thank you so much for watching. If you stuck through it till the end, I know I don't have a lot of supporters or subscribers. I know that this probably won't even get more than a few hundred views, but I really do appreciate you watching. I hope everybody has a great new year, and I'll be making some new videos coming up here. I'm not doing so much subbing right now, but I've got a couple other ideas of just going through and kind of showing you more about what I'm into as far as my collection goes, because I do a lot of autographs and some other things. So, all right, like I said, Happy New Year. Feel free to like and subscribe. Peace.